Hello, boys and girls, fabulous second graders. This is Mrs. Cabral going and doing our lesson on features of informational texts. So informational texts are ones that are not like stories that have characters and a problem and a setting and all those things that we normally read. This week we're reading an informational text, and just like the name says, it's a text that gives us information about a particular topic or a place or a person. Maybe a biography would be an informational text. So we're going to go over the different features that most informational texts have. And then when you go back and read the Sharks book today, maybe you can spot some of these informational text features while you're reading. So first of all, we've always talked about this whenever we've read informational texts in class, is the table of contents. So it shows the different headings or different topics that are covered in the book, and it tells us what page we can find that topic. So if I am reading this here book about frogs and I want to know the frog life cycle, I don't need to flip through every single page in the book until I find frog life cycle. I can just look at my table of contents and see, oh, life cycle starts all the way over on page 12. Similarly, we have an index. Now, the index usually comes at the end of the informational text, whereas the table of contents is usually the first couple pages after the title page. The index is usually at the back of the book. And an index has all of the different terms, events, key names, and topics that are mentioned in the book and what page you can find that on. So after I've read my book about frogs, I want to go back and I want to read the page that talks about tadpoles, but I can't remember what page it was on, and I don't really have time to flip through 70 pages of this frog book. So I'm going to go and look in my index under the letter T for tadpole, and there we go. It's on page 17. So now that I want to go and look into this thing about tadpoles, I can flip right to page 17, and there it is. All right, now we've seen this a lot when we read informational texts like our books that we get with our EEI about the mule deer and about the different types of people who make food, produce food, consume food. These headings. It is the title at the top of a paper or at the beginning of a new section, like a paragraph. And it helps the reader know what the section or page will be about. So this large heading that they've circled over here in red, Life on the ISS. So we know all of the paragraphs that follow that heading are all going to talk about life on the International Space Station. Then we have subheadings. So subheadings give us even more of a hint of the main idea of that paragraph. So we have this big heading that tells us this whole page or this whole section is going to be about life on the ISS. That's our heading. And then we have these little bit smaller but still bold and big subheadings. So they says morning routine. So this whole paragraph is going to be under that main idea of morning routine. Then this whole paragraph, it says eating in space. So everything that follows that little subheading is going to be all about eating in space. So the cool thing about informational text is we can easily find the main idea of a paragraph because they give us these subheadings. It's not a mystery. It's not something we really need to hunt for. Okay, some other things that informational texts also include are things like photographs, which is just a picture, a real life picture taken with a camera that shows us what the animal, the person, the building, the structure, the famous piece of nature, whatever it is, it shows us what it would look like in real life. And I'm sure most of us have taken a picture or been in a picture, so we know what a photograph is. And then this is really important, the caption. So sometimes we look at it and we're like, oh my goodness, like even this example here, for a minute you might go, oh my goodness, what am I looking at? But the caption, these little words underneath the picture, tell us what's going on. They tell us what's happening in the picture. So it says, this is a tiny frog sitting on a bicycle seat. Well, when I first looked at it, I didn't notice that it was a bicycle seat, and I maybe had to look a little closer to see that, oh, it's a tiny little frog. So captions can be very helpful for us to know what's going on in the picture. What is it that we're looking at? Or if it's in like a biography, it might tell you who the people are from left to right, Sally, Susie, John, and Joe. Something like that, so that you can know, oh, I'm reading this book about Pocahontas, and here's a picture of Pocahontas. Well, which one is she? And the caption would help us to show which person we're reading about. Captions usually come at the bottom. Sometimes they're maybe off to the side or even maybe above it. But usually the caption would be at the bottom of the picture. And then our last sort of photographic piece of information is the close-up. So sometimes, like if we look at the moon here from far away, this regular far away picture of the moon, we're like, it looks kind of like a smooth surface that's different colors. But then we zoom in super close and we see that the moon has all kinds of ridges and bumps, and it has this crater here. So it's like we get a little bit closer look at what we're looking at. Oh, so the moon does have like a rough surface and dips and hills and valleys. So the close-up helps us see like what something really looks like in great detail. All right, this is something I know Mrs. Cabral's class has talked about quite a bit, is bold words. When we see something that's in dark, bold letters, we know that that's an important vocabulary word. It's something we should pay attention to, and it's maybe a word that we should learn the meaning of. So bold print are words that are written with thick, heavy lines and show that they are important. So I'm reading this paragraph about the human body, and bold words that I see: skeleton, muscles, tendon, skin. Those are all probably words that I should learn the meaning of so that I can understand this paragraph better. And those bold words also should be in the glossary. So the glossary, kind of like the index, the glossary usually comes at the end of a book. A lot of times when we're reading books on Raz Kids, there'll be a glossary at the end. And it's kind of like a dictionary, except for it doesn't have all the definitions of all the possible words in the world. It just has the definition of these bold words that we saw while we were reading. So we look to the glossary. Oh, I want to know what muscles means. I could look it up in my glossary. Unfortunately, my little example here, they don't match up. So they go in alphabetical order. They contain all of the words that were unfamiliar vocabulary words when we read our informational text. So bold print, if I don't know what that word means, I can go to the back to the glossary and look at what those words mean. Okay, sometimes our informational text will have a diagram, and a diagram is usually a drawing of the parts of something or how something looks. So in this example, they're showing us a rocket before it takes off, and the diagram has all of the parts and then they are labeled. So here's why we have this labels thing next to it. So words that tell you about the specific parts of a picture or diagram. So sometimes you have to look at a diagram and labels, like if you buy new furniture and you have to build something, they'll have a diagram and they'll label what pieces you need, what piece goes into what other piece, what type of screw you use to connect two pieces. That would be a time that we would need a diagram and need to read the labels. Or like this example here, they're showing us a telescope. And maybe you're reading the directions on how to use your telescope, and it'll say, pull the counterweight down so that it is facing to the left. And you're like, wait, what is a counterweight? I can look at my diagram and I can look at my labels and see, oh, the counterweight is this little piece right here that's sticking out. So that's a way of using diagrams and labels to help you. And they will be very useful as you grow up and you have to do things on your own and you need to read directions in order to complete a task. So very important that we start learning how to read those now. Some other types of helpful graphics or helpful pictures that are in informational text are timelines, which tell us in order events that happen. So usually we think of timelines as like a person's life. So over on the far left would be the year they were born. Then it might be when they started school, when they graduated high school, when they got to college, when they were married, when they had children. Those kinds of things are all on a timeline. It tells us in order the dates and times that events happen. Charts and graphs. We are back to our frog book here. These are the different kinds of frogs and the amount of their extinction, it looks like. So how many are threatened, how many are near extinction, how many are not threatened. So pie charts can kind of help us show how many of each type of thing we have. And then maps. We like to look at maps and see where things are located. If they're talking about something that's happening in New York City, and we know, oh, we're way over here in California, New York City's way over here, we get an idea of how far away that is, how close it is in relation to where we are. So maps can be very helpful. And the last thing, since we're using computers so much for everything that we do, we have electronic menus. So those are those things at the top, and we have these little drop downs so we can navigate and get to exact information that we want to look up. And then icons. We have small graphics, pictures, or symbols that stand for a website, an app, or another purpose. So one that I've been using a lot lately, and I don't see it on here, is a lot of our websites that we use have an icon for me to put it right onto Google Classroom. So I can click on that icon and stick it right on Google Classroom for you. Or let's say I found something really cool and I need to share it with all of my friends on Facebook. I could click on the little Facebook icon and it'll take it right to Facebook so I can post it on there. Online shopping, you probably recognize this. This is your cart. Maybe I want to print something. I would click on my printer icon, download, saving stuff. This is a disk. When we were first using computers, we used to have to use these things called floppy disks. And that was how we saved information to use it again later. And so the disk usually means to save things. So I hope this was helpful for you guys, and have a great rest of your day. I know this is probably the longest one because there was so much to go over. So have a great day. See you later.